Hi, and welcome to Cinemaazi Studios. What a wonderful time we're going to have. I am very excited to be here with one of my favorite filmmakers, Rahul Rawail ji. We are going to talk about your career, sir, which has had a very, very big impact on Hindi cinema. And we're also going to talk about your father's career, H.S. Rawail, the great filmmaker with films like Mere Mehboob, Laila Majnu, and Sangharsh, the breakthrough film of Sanjeev Kumar, and the influences that Sir has had, which include, of course, his father and the great Raj Kapoor. So, without further ado, let's just start. You were born in a film family, sir.
Yeah.
Your father was a very well established filmmaker, a writer, and a producer. How was it to grow up in the 50s and 60s in that kind of a family?
Well, you were surrounded with film people because all his friends were all filmmakers or actors. To me, it was an influence which wanted me to stay away from films. I don't know why, but I didn't want to. I had, like most children have, somebody was a policeman or a firefighter, and maybe at one stage I wanted to. But as I grew up, I was very keen on doing nuclear physics. And I was supposed to go to Canada to study nuclear physics till I happened to go on the sets of Miram Joker. That changed everything.
You grew up in a household where you would have the likes of Dilip Saab, Sanjeev Kumar, and just about who's who of the Hindi film industry walk in and walk out. And yet you did not want to do that. What happened when you went to Rajji's sets? What changed in you?
Uh, I don't know that when I saw him working, uh, it gave me a completely different insight. Because I used to not go on my father's sets so often.
Okay.
But when I went to the sets here, he was shooting Miram Joker. And it gave me a different insight into the man himself.
Rajji is someone that you have known as a family friend. You grew up very close to Rishi Kapoor, you were childhood friends.
Yes. The way he was controlling the crowds, 5,000 people, this unit, and he precisely knew what he wanted, and it was like a symphony being created by a composer without a music sheet. And I think that is something which really struck me.
Did it also somewhere make you relook at your father's films? Because now you're seeing filmmaking in a different light?
Yes, I did, and Dad's films, of course, like Mere Mehboob and Sangharsh and Laila Majnu. Mere Mehboob is an iconic film, which, let me be honest, till today, I detest that film. I hate that film. Yeah. But maybe I'm looking at it a different way, or in my childhood, where I found it boring. Of course, it's a very well mounted film and all that. But Dad's earlier work was all really exceptional. There were films like Shararat and Roop Ki Rani Choro Ka Raja. They all were exceptional films.
This is an old Roop Ki Rani Choro Ka Raja which had Dev Saab in it.
Dev Saab and Vahidhar.
There is this great folklore and urban legend that H.S. Rawail Saab created Mere Mehboob just to incorporate 5 or 6 songs that he had. Is it true?
That's not true. The only person I know who used to make films and who wanted it because he had 5 or 6 songs was Mr. Tarachan Bhattacharyya of Rajshri. Because he had called me for a film and I to do a film for him, and I said, "Do you have a story?" So he said, "No, I have 6 songs."
Wow.
And I wanted to find a story around these 6 songs. So that's the only time I'd heard of that. Yes, of course. At times, which even I've been through, is that we had to find a story to fit one particular song. And that happened in Arjun. Arjun originally was to be made with Sunny and Kumar Gaurav.
Okay.
Because the producers thought, and we also believed, that'd be a great casting coup. You know, the star of Love Story and the star of Betaab together in a film. For some reason, Bunty did not want to do it. And then we decided to approach Chintu, Rishi. And he liked the story. And Pancham had this song, Mamaya Kero. It's an old Portuguese song. So we decided that we'll use this song for that film, this situation. And we recorded the song. But it so happened to the script, as the script went along, Javed Sahib and me felt the script was not working. So we wanted to drop it. You know, for me, it was a pretty embarrassing thing because Chintu was involved in it. But finally, I had to explain to him, and he understood the whole thing. The producers put their foot down. Whatever happens, Mamaya Kero has to be the film.
So when you started assisting Rajji in Mera Naam Joker, it was a very important film in his filmography. It took considerable time to get made. But the reaction and the response was not quite what Raj Kapoor was used to. And this is also the time where your father's film, Mehboob Ki Mehendi, does not generate the kind of response that one would have expected from that kind of a film. You had Rajesh Khanna in it, you had Leena Ji in it. These changes, because this is also the period where younger filmmakers, if I can use that term, Randhir Kapoor was emerging. There was Ramesh Sippy, who was transitioning from the Andaz phase to Sita and Geeta. How did you see this change happening of that old school of filmmaking not generating the kind of response that these stalwarts were used to?
See, I don't think it was the generation gap at all. I think they probably went wrong in what they did. As far as Mera Naam Joker goes, I joined when they started shooting the circus portion. And I remember when the entire film was completed, it ran for about 5 hours. This was the film. And that was a nightmare. So it was finally cut down to about 4 hours and a couple of minutes with 2 intervals. And we were seeing a preview in the studio. And the problem in that was in the third part. You know, Rajinder Kumar,
The final.
yeah, Rajinder Kumar, Padmini and
Rajji's at the circus.
Not the circus,
the film star.
The film star. And while watching the film, Rasam used to always stand at the back door of the projection room. And he said, what reel is going on? So somebody said, it's reel 23. He said, okay, run up to the projection and tell the projector to run reel 27. After that, skip 24, 25, 26. So I went up and told the projectionist, and he ran it from 26. And the narration had not been affected. You know, so that was a bad sign. And most people in the studio, especially Dabu Sahib, had told Raj Sahib that, you know, Dad, this is not working. He even suggested that we should only release the first portion with Rishi Kapoor and the circus. And let's forget the third. Yeah. Raj Sahib said something which is a lesson to learn. He said, look, I'm the filmmaker. I think this film is perfect. I've seen the film over and over again, like you people have. But I cannot think of Katna Kya Cheez Me. It must run as it is. And what you suggest to me I should remove, I have a counter for everything. And a counter for all that. He said, as a filmmaker, this is what I want. But if you guys are right and I am wrong, I will realize it. But only on the day when the film releases and people pay money and come out at 3 o'clock after the first show, they will tell me what is right and wrong. And that is the day I'll realize I should have cut it. That I think was a very, very pertinent thing for him to say. Dad also in Mehboob Ki Mehndi, because it was a Muslim social again, there were a couple of things which I felt were a little wrong. Is that he tried to modernize that whole genre into what's happening today. See, Mere Mehboob ke time pe it was still there. But when Mehboob Ki Mehndi came, the sherwanis and things had all gone out of place.
इस डंडे का रुख बदलो बरखुरदा, ये फकीरों की तरफ उंगली उठा रहा है। बेहतर है फेंक देते हैं इस नामासूर को। आइए तशरीफ लाइए।
The Muslim culture was there. Then even the whole atmosphere was modernized, but it had some tradition in it, like the clothes they wear. I think that also went wrong. But both these filmmakers, whether it was Raj Saab or Dad, the next film they came out with were two of the major blockbusters of the country. There was Bobby, which was huge. And then there was Dad's Laila Majnu, which was again huge. Now, again in Laila Majnu, it had the culture, the thing of the Muslims thing, but was set in that period where you believed that this would happen. So I guess that's what.
But it's interesting that you point this thing out, that if you see 3 decades, your father made the Muslim social and he kind of set the template of the style, even though you have Najma and you have other films which predate Mere Mehboob. Mere Mehboob created the perfect universe for the Muslim social. You look at Mehboob Ki Mehndi, which is slightly trying to modernize it, but at the same time a throwback. And in the 80s, he makes Didare Yaar, which was again an attempt to enmesh a lot of genres. When we look at your independent career, the biggest impact that your initial career had was with BVO BV, which is one of the rare, smartly done comedies which would today be called politically incorrect. How did that come about, and what's the kind of experience that you had?
Look, BVO BV came about because that was the first film I was asked to direct. It was before Love Story. And then I was asked by Raj Saab to direct a film, his own production, which was a great feeling. You being asked to direct a film for the boss. And he had this story he had heard. It was a book by Professor Tamane from Pune, which he liked very much. And I read that book, and I also found it very, very interesting. So decided to make it, and the only thing we had really agreed upon was that we'd get Sanjeev Kumar to play that character. Dabu Saab, Ranbir Kapoor was always to be there. And I think a great force in BVO BV was the writing, written by Abrar Alvi. Now, Abrar Alvi, the sense of humor he had.
क्या कहते हो जी? पढ़ा लिखा है मेरा बेटा?
पढ़ा लिखा है तो कोई काम क्यों नहीं करता? सारा दिन बीवी की तान मारता रहता है.
And the way he wrote lines was brilliant. BVO BV did not work at that time, but if I get any fan mail today, they only talk about BVO BV. They don't talk about my Betaab or my Arjun or Dacait. It's people talking about BVO BV. And like Shahrukh told me, he said, I have a print of BVO BV. whenever I'm upset, I switch that on.
In that early phase of your career, you attempted romance in a very different way. So if you see these three films of yours, Love Story, which, just to tell you guys, would be perhaps the only film in the world which does not have
Yeah.
a director's name. These three films that you look at, which looked at romance in a very different light. You have BBOBB, you have Betaab, and you have Love Story. This is something which is also a revival of the genre, because every romantic phase needs a big star, and you gave that in Kumar Gaurav's form. But at the same time, if you see BBOBB or even if you see Betaab, there is a slight relationship between Shami Kapoor's character and Nirupa Roy's character, and in Love Story, the relationship between Rajinder Kumar, Danny, and the woman that they both loved is also something which very few love stories or very few debut love stories attempt. Was that something that was always at the back of your mind, or it is something that you credit the writers more in helping you to envision that kind of thing?
Look, when they narrated Love Story, the Mirza brothers, what they had in mind was the lovers being handcuffed together, which came from a film which I knew it. And when I told them, they were very offended. कि जी ये कौन सी film हमने देखी नहीं है. This is what everybody does. Everybody says, I've never seen this film. And of course they have. It was a film called Defiant Ones. It had Tony Curtis and Sidney Poitier. It was a black and a white who were handcuffed together, and its relationship. So I found that very interesting, that, a boy and a girl who don't get along are handcuffed together, and that leads to their falling in love. But we had to have a backstory, because in all love stories you need an opposition. So that's where, it was like a brainstorming thing. So we decided to have the backstory of the parents. That one time she was in love with him, and then she got married to somebody else. So I thought it would make a great backstory for a film. And that's how it came out. And there was that one scene where they meet in a guest house. He's gone to find the kids. They've also gone to find the kids, and it's raining, and he comes there. And he meets Vidya and Danny. Rajnikanth meets them. And that one crucial scene between the three, where they talk about, where they're talking about the problem now. But you have the inherent undercurrent of the love which existed between them. You have that undercurrent of Vidya Sinha still cannot get over the fact that she did not marry Rajendra Kumar. And the way the scene was treated, because of the influence of Raj Kapoor in Sangam, in the climax, whenever they spoke, one character moved towards another, the second moved to another point. So this triangle was always maintained in that scene. That's something which had got embedded in my mind, and that's how we did that scene in Love Story. Of course, I screwed up in it also. And I went completely haywire in trying to maintain that. But I did manage to get it through. And somewhere it created this thing in mind, because I had lots of reactions from people. Some saying, oh, you've done what Rasab did in Sangam. I said, yeah, I did. I'm not denying it. It's my homage to
Your guru.
my guru. Like Arjun had this scene with Sunny, where he walks into an auditorium where there's a political meeting going on, and the door opens, and he's in a silhouette, which was Guru Dutt. It was exactly that. It was meant to be. So if somebody did not see it as Guru Dutt, he was either a man who had never seen a Guru Dutt film. Because had a man seen a Guru Dutt film, that's an image he would always know. So there's no harm in that.
Ideally speaking, what is the kind of film that a young budding filmmaker like you would be thinking to make? Because You have influences such as your father, you have influences such as Raj Kapoor. What was the kind of film that you would be thinking of?
See, when I made Love Story and Betaab, the influence of Bobby was very much there. The thing on romance, the way Raj saw it, he believed that the true romantic situations are not where people are speaking. It's the expression, the feeling where they are. Like remember, there was a great scene in Bobby where Pran Saab and Premnath are having this argument
आखिर आपने सोचा कैसे कि आपकी बेटी इस घर में अब dare you plan a thing like that? Stop it, Mr. Nath!
about the children, and Chintu and Dimple are in the room with that toy of a couple dancing.
Yeah.
And that was brilliant. And so that's how Love Story and Betaab both came about.
It's very interesting that this is a facet of your filmography that not many people focus on, or because the body of work is so phenomenal that it often gets overlooked. You have a phenomenal debut in Kumar Gaurav and Vijayta. You have a fantastic debut in Sunny Deol and Amrita Singh. You also then have one of the most iconic stars of the 90s, Kajol, and Kamal Sadana debuting with you, and of course Aishwarya in Aur Pyar Ho Gaya. What is this brilliance of yours with newcomers? How is it that across a decade and a little more than that, irrespective of the genre, look at what their strengths would be? Because in the first film you're very raw, you have certain, you're not that polished.
Firstly, I wish I knew that there was a formula. I'd make a film again today with newcomers. Also, Raza, when he introduced Dimple and Chintu in Bobby, there were lots of things which he had said, which to me were things pertaining to newcomers. That this is how they should be portrayed. And that's what I really, that stayed at the back of my mind. I think a director's major thing is to turn your, let's say, liabilities into assets. They are habits from childhood, which you cannot do without. He's got to see to it that those are not seen by the audience. And if they are seen by the audience, they should become assets. A director is not a magician. He cannot wave a wand and make you perform. The effort has to come from you. He can only help you with a performance. I'll give you an example in Arjun. And when I worked with Sunny in Betaab, I realized one thing while, in general conversations. When he was looking at somebody intently, his left eye would slowly become slightly smaller. It was so slight that you never even could notice it. But I had seen that, and when we did shoot Betaab, there were no big close-ups of Sunny. It was purposely because I did not want this eye to disturb it, because I've seen it. There must be 1 million people who will see it also. When we came to Arjun, he played a very intensive character, and a lot of Arjun was based on his expression, and he never spoke. So in that, see the film, there were close-ups of Sunny, which were huge. They were this big, where part of the hairline was cut off and the chin was cut off. And on a screen, when you see that kind of thing, it overpowers you completely. And it was the first time, I think, close-up images of that size were seen. And in a lot of scenes, I used to have the camera switched on and tell Sunny, just keep looking at this place. And he would, and then gradually his eye would become very slightly smaller, and he had Christine supposed to have tears because he'd been upset. And then the edit, I used those portions from where his eye from the normal size went a little smaller. And there was a lot of credit for that. That, the director makes an actor perform.
Yeah.
The way Sunny Deol performs, and at crucial moments, the way his eye becomes slightly smaller. Now, it had nothing to do with his performance. It was only what I would call a liability being turned in when I set, which I think is essential to do.
It's very interesting to see that how you used the actor in Sunny before the world saw the actor in Sunny Deol. Because Arjun, of course, Betaab sets the foundation, but it's Arjun that clearly puts him in a different league.
For about 6 months, we were trying to work on different angles, and then finally, on a Sunday at the Farias Hotel in Lonavala, Javed Sahab and me were there for 3 months working on scripts, and every time we'd come to 8 or 9 versions, we scrap it because it was not working. And there was an article in the Times of India on the rise of Dawood and his family, the boys, and the Pathan gang, and how the gang came up, how Dawood and all rose to this. And the essence of that was that there were politicians who were actually had encouraged these young boys to take to crime. And so we were just generally talking about that. And next day we were to leave for Bombay. Around 9:30 we went to bed. And Javed Sahab woke me up at about 4 in the morning. And he said, come to my room. I went there, and he said, I have an idea which I wanted to hear. Tell me if you like it. Now, this idea must have germinated between about 11 at night and 4 in the morning. So I said, fine. I said, let's hear it. What Javed Sahab narrated to me was something which I think must have happened with very few people in the world. Is I heard an entire script of Arjun. In those couple of hours, he had a whole script of Arjun, right from the first scene till the last scene. He had actually written the whole thing. And it was fascinating to hear. I know Arjun had no story. It was based on a character. And it was fascinating to hear that. So we decided to make that film. When we got to Bombay, and I told the Moranis that, look, finally we've got a good script. First question was, is Mama Yokero there in it or not? So we said, yes, it is very much there.
This phase where you had 3 Javed Akhtar scripts, which kind of refreshed the angry young man that he and Salim Saab had created in the form of Mashal, where you have 2 generations of angry men, Dilip Saab and Anil Kapoor. You had Miri Jung, where you had this lawyer trying to avenge his family, and you had Arjun. Out of these 3 films, Arjun is the one which stands true even today because the problems that you were trying to show there. Of course, you mentioned a little while ago that how it got inspired, or the kicker came from the emergence of Dawood Ibrahim and that kind of henchman. But if you look at it today or even back then, it seems like a statement on urban unemployment and some kind of loss of direction for the young person, which is a universal theme. What was the sense that you were getting when you were making that film? Because we often forget to focus on the villain in the film, the character played by Anupam Kher, Shiv Kumar Chogle, who becomes this testimony for all kind of political people. You know, if you look at Gulzar's Mere Apne, which came in the preceding generation, where politicians use young people, or if you look at Ankush, which came a few years after your film, and then of course in the 90s, there are many films which show that urban dissonance. What is the sense that you were getting when you were making Arjun? Because it's a very real film, it's a very gritty film. You shoot on the streets of Bombay. You're shooting at a time where India is few years, about half a decade, still from economic liberalization. It's a phase which is changing, and we're just about to, at the onset of Mandal commission riots and all that. What is the sense that you were getting while you were making that film? Because there's a lot of you also in the film.
See, the basic character in Arjun was the educated unemployed, which was a rampant problem at that time. Was a huge problem at that time. It's a problem today also. But today people have, they can fall back on call centers, and it's not as bad as it was then. Then it was very bad. And there were lots of people I knew and we saw, there was an inherent anger in them. The anger was not at an individual. The anger was at the fact that they were educated and unemployed. And for that, they blamed society for shunning them. So that's what the character's anger was. There were reactions from people that, the film is, it was a very stupid word which is used, is non-commercial, and I find that very stupid. And then, the other thing was, it's too real. I mean, what do you mean by too real? In fact, that street where we shot, practically 70% of the film was a set in Rajkamal Studios. Yeah. We had built a set, and we had BST buses and all these things on hire. So my bus would come and go whenever I wanted it to. And the financer, a gentleman called Dilip Kankaria, he was seeing the film, and he made a ridiculous statement. He said, the set is not good. So I said, Dilip, are you mad? You saying the set is not good? He said, no, it's too real. It doesn't look like a set. I mean, that's stupid. That's really stupid. That's what. And it's not only him. A lot of people said this. They never said it's bad. But they said this. यार वो सेट बहुत ज़्यादा रियल लगता है यार. So people had their own views about it, and when we did the set in Bombay, we used to see camels. That time in Bombay, you had camels on the beach. People used to go for rides and all that. And I used to see the camels being walked on the streets of Bombay, which was a very strange sight, to see a camel being walked. So I called for a camel during Arjun shoot to make that part of the props on the set. And it was quite a tedious thing to get a camel all the way from Juhu to Lower Parel. And when the rush print came, and the producers had only one problem. They said, where is the camel? We can't see the camel. You see, they were only interested, where is the money going to, when is one seeing that? And, everything doesn't have to be underlined. It happens in the background. And Arjun had a lot of moments from real life, like the umbrella sequence where the friend gets killed. It was a combination of 2-3 things. When Boni Kapoor was getting married, from the Sangeet ceremony at the Holiday Inn, my wife and me were driving back, and about 3 in the morning on Linking Road, I saw a chap screaming and running. and being chased by about 8 guys with swords. You could only see the swords. You could not see the guy because he was covered by the tops of the car. And then when he came out in the open, he was trying to open the doors of the cars. They didn't. And the last thing we saw is I just drove away. We saw this chap fall. Apparently, they must have killed him. So that's one thing. And secondly was Raj Saab used to shoot a lot in Pune. He used to go there and, at his farm. And though he lived in Chembur, which was closer than VT station, he would insist on going by train from VT on the Pune train in the evening, Deccan Queen. Why? Because he liked the food stuff what they served. He used to love that. So for that, we used to drive from Chembur to town and then take a train. And at times we missed the train and then he would chase the train. I've been with him on that. He said, okay, we'll take the train from Kalyan. We missed at Kalyan. Okay, we'll take it at Lonavala. We missed at Lonavala. We'll take it one more station and finally we reached Pune, trying to chase the queen because he wanted to eat the food, the railway cutlets and stuff like that. So whenever we go to Pune, the Deccan 5 in the evening, opposite VT, there's a gully where there's a very famous small little place called Panchampuri House. Very popular. And it was one place where there was a shade. So when I used to come from town because I had college there. And when it rained, there were days when I stood at Panchampuri House and I saw people coming out of the offices. And all I could see was a sea of black, just the umbrellas. You know, couldn't see anybody's face. There were no colorful umbrellas at that time. So that was an image in the head. So when we did this umbrella sequence, so that and seeing those guys with the swords were two things which got amalgamated into that sequence.
This is the realism which I think rubbed off on many films that came after that. But you immediately switched gears for the next film that you and Sunny Deol did together.
Dacait.
This is Samandar in Between.
Samandar is in between.
So that is an exotic film.
Yeah.
If one were to look, you shot overseas. I think it was Mauritius, if I'm not mistaken.
Maldives.
And it's got lovely songs. And it's also a gap between these two intense films that you did. And immediately after that, you go into Dacait. Now, I feel that Dacait was a very important film because in the realm of Hindi films, commercial Hindi films, you were trying to do something which very few filmmakers do. You were making a statement on the caste disparity. You were making a statement on some real problems once again, where people take to lawlessness and people take law in their hands. It's the same team. Javed Saab is writing, R.D. Burman is scoring the music, you have Sunny Deol in front of the camera and you helm in the film. It becomes a very important film also because in the so-called number games, there is a focus on who's going to be the next big star after Mr. Bachchan because that phase was ending. There's a constant tussle between Anil Kapoor and Sunny Deol. And thanks to a film like Arjun, there's a fillip to Sunny Deol's career. Sanjay Dutt also makes a comeback, so to speak, after Naam at this point. And Jackie Shroff, since Hero till now, has been a constant factor. There was a lot going on with Dacait because the industry was looking at it also. You were trying to change the narrative. Of course, many of these things we are looking in hindsight. But tell us a little bit about the making of Dacait and why you feel it was an important film that you got into it.
See, when we did Dacait, the first thing we decided was that our Dacait is not going to be on a horse. He's not going to wear a pagdi. And he's definitely not going to go to the mandir. And the cops are going to come because every Dacait film does that. You know, ki aaj wo mandir aayega or, you know, the cops are there. We decided to treat the Dacait as a normal human being, which he was. And so he would be in, you know, his jeans and a t-shirt, and he'd be on foot. And we went to Gwalior to do some research on this, and we met Pulan Devi there. And those 2 days with Pulan actually contributed a lot into Dacait. She endorsed the view that they never use horses. They did use horses, but in very rare situations. She said mostly it was on foot. Every location, when the script was being done, they were thought of by Javed Akhtar and we together, sitting in a air-conditioned room, and taken for granted that there'll be a fort in a ravine. We met Pulan Devi and at the jail in Gwalior, and we ran the scenes by her that we require a fort in the Bihar, and we require this. And she, on a map, actually pinpointed all the locations to us. That this is where you'll find this, this is where you'll find this. She gave us lots of inputs, like how they got bullets. When she spoke about that killing, how she killed them over 3 days. She killed them over 3 days. She came across as such a cruel woman that it sent shivers up your spine. And this woman was only 4 feet tall, and she had no emotion at all. She had apparently lost all her emotion after her boyfriend died, and then after the rape. Her rape was also a horrible thing because she was raped non-stop for 5 days by the same people. She was tied in the village square, and the whole village would come and rape her whenever they wanted to, which was a very pathetic thing. Paresh Rawal's character, the cop, Javed had this kind of character, but we met a cop like this, courtesy Pulan Devi, and she told us a lot about the cop, which is all incorporated into the script. In fact, our first meeting with him, he was in Bhind, the SP, and we went there. So we asked, where is the SP? They said, वो 3 डाकू मारे गए कल, तो वो फोटो खिंचवा रहे हैं उनके साथ. So we said, we have to see this. And we went to the village square. He and his family were all sitting, all dressed up, and each holding the head of one dead dacoit, and people clicking photographs with these people, this big smile on their face. And we put that in the film also. And that's where Dacait really came up from. There are some people, they react very badly. I was a little sure the film would not work because one lady, she fainted in the theatre in a preview, so which I found to be bad. But Anand Bakshi told me, he said at the end where Sunny kills Raza Murad, it's not as effective as what happened to his mother. He said the revenge is too meek, which I don't think is going to go very well. And Raza told me the same thing. He said, no, I was expecting much, much more in the climax. Anyway, that's now history. But the film did affect people in a big way. Shabana, I remember, had gone into a shell. For 2-3 days, she did not react, did not speak to anybody. And there was Rekha's hairdresser. She came out of the film, and she saw me, she came to me, and she embraced me, and she just started crying. She wouldn't say anything, and she just stood there crying for about 5-7 minutes. So somewhere I felt that maybe the film is getting a bit too heavy. Maybe in today's times it might have worked. Of course. With today people's minds changing, but at that time it had got really heavy.
Because just a few years later, when Bandit Queen comes out, it is shot by Ashok Mehta and directed by Shekhar Kapoor. For all practical purposes, it is an Indian film and a Hindi film. The reaction is completely different, and Dacait somewhere sets up that mood for that.
I think another reason for Bandit Queen to do this was the explicit language that they used. So that made the film look real, because first time that kind of language was used.
Was it the non-working of Dacait, or was it something else that made you take a sabbatical of sorts?
That was not working on Dacait. It affected me very badly. Because that's a film which till today I'm very proud of. And that did affect me very badly.
If you were to go back and change something about any of these iconic films that we today consider landmark, Arjun, Betaab, and Dacait, which one would you try to change, and what would you change?
It's a very difficult thing to answer, because there are, of course, always when you see a film again, like I watch my films, I always hate them. I could have done a better job here, a better job there. But then I'm talking only about technical things. I'm not talking about the essence. Like, I don't know, with changing the climax of Dacait, would it have changed the fate of the film or not? I doubt it. Because we've seen over years in films, a film is released and after a week people have decided to cut down the length or change the climax. It doesn't work. Agnipath, when it released with Amitabh Bachchan, they dubbed his voice again in a day, but it didn't work. It's what Mr. Ranbir Kapoor, Tabu Saab, has to say. He's a joker, and he said, the problem is that if a horse is dead and you give the kick to the horse on his backside, he's not going to stand up and start running again because he's dead. So nothing is going to happen to the film, which is true.
It was fascinating chatting with you, sir. And
thank you so much.
We look forward to a longer interview, which is part 2, where we talk about your 90s. But that's in a few months from now. We'll grace us once again.
It's been wonderful for me to be here, and I'm really thrilled with what Cinemaazi is doing, and I've had the pleasure of seeing part of your collection over here, which is fantastic. You showed me something of a page from Screen, which I think a 1955 issue, where the headline was self-censorship by the industry is what they are looking at, which is something which is happening till now.
You're looking forward to a book that you're writing.
I hope, because it talks about Raj Kapoor, and we're not talking about Raj Kapoor the showman. We know that. We're talking about Raj Kapoor, the man, and the man at work. How he looked at cinema, how films affected him, and everything he did was related to his work in some manner or the other. And there's a lot of funny stuff which he's spoken about, and when he had to say something, he would say it. He could not keep quiet about it. So that I know one or two things which I have in that might upset some other ongoing actors and actresses, but it's okay, because these things happen, and they cannot deny that. And
true. These are also the things which create the memory of cinema, and this is what Cinemaazi is all about. So look forward to more times with you.
Absolutely, and I look forward to being here. Thanks.